Everybody, welcome in here to Spartan Stadium in East Lansing, Michigan. It was the site of a beatdown. Ohio State 52-12. Their return to action after last week's cancellation. The number 4 undefeated Buckeyes absolutely rolled, but there are a lot of storylines to get into on Rapid Reaction, brought to you by Byers Auto, because Ohio State finally revealed an availability report, and they had to show up here and play without 3 starting offensive linemen. The top tackle coming off the bench was also out. 3-time captain, starting middle linebacker Tuff Boylan was out. Versatile, do-it-all defensive back Josh Proctor was out. Ryan Day was out. 3 other coaches were missing. Corey Dennis, Greg Madison, Matt Barnes, all here. You add all this up and you think, I was a little concerned for the Buckeyes and getting through it without that offensive line to start. Yeah. And then they just go out, really no problems. Cruise through this one, win by 40. And get a lot of style points in the process.
Well, style points are important, apparently, out there. In 2020, they shouldn't be, but, it kind of goes back to what we said all week. As long as number 1 is on the field for Ohio State, everything else is kind of fixable. Certainly, there are some issues. There are some question marks that are going to come up. Harry Miller's snapping the ball was a little bit off, let's just say that. But that, I'm not going to blame the kid. That's a tough situation to be put in. The Buckeyes have a lot of depth, but it's being tested, and that's why they recruit at the level they do. It's why the Buckeyes are one of the top 3 or 4 programs in the country year in and year out, because no one else in the country could withstand being down 17 scholarship players and come out and play probably their best game of the entire season.
Yeah, I think all of that focus will still be on the offensive line, because we don't know exactly when all those guys. Josh Myers didn't play. And we can't say for certain that Ohio State doesn't designate whether they're COVID-19 situations or other injuries.
Or contact tracing.
Yeah, or contact tracing. So we don't know for sure when Thayer Munford, Josh Myers, Nicholas Petit-Frere, or potentially Paris Johnson could return for the Buckeyes. But that was compounded late in the game when Wyatt Davis left. I believe he headed to that tunnel over there on crutches. That will have to be monitored as well, because you're talking then about 4 starting offensive linemen that be missing, and Harry Miller has started 5 games and now only 1 at center. As you said, it's not surprising that you get thrust into that position next year.
Yeah.
When he's going to be the starting center in all likelihood. He'll have spring ball, he'll have training camp, he'll have some non-conference games. He's not been preparing to play center. Now, that's not to make excuses for him, because if he has to play next week against Michigan or whoever else might need to step in, if that's the situation, you can't have those issues. Now, Justin Fields really saved him, put some of those shortstop skills to work, and he was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm going to be clear. Being on the field for the game, I could tell you that Wyatt was limping off the field, but he was not on crutches, at least not at the unless he grabbed them at the tunnel when they were. So he was at least on his own power. Clearly an issue with the left leg, it looked like. For Harry, for DeJuan Jones, for Max Ray, I mean, that's a guy who needs a lot of praise for today, because he's not even a guy we've talked about over these last 3 years as like the next man up. And for Max to step in today and to be pretty good, I mean, no holding penalties, no false starts, nothing on the offensive line the entire game. That's pretty crazy when you think about the fact that this offensive line is in the position that it was put into. And the defensive line, we had a handful of guys, Tyler Friday who didn't play, but then you get to see someone like Tyreek Smith play one of his best games. And again, the story of the year outside of COVID-19, if COVID-19 wasn't happening, the story of the year is probably Haskell Garrett. And his touchdown, I mean, the Buckeyes were up 21-0 at that point. It's not like they were in any jeopardy, but the fact of the matter is that guy's story is incredible. And I can't believe that we're living in a world where a guy who's an inch away from being gone, and I don't mean off the football team, I mean off the earth, right. 3 months ago, is the best offensive lineman maybe in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and really, I've said this to you before, you could even remove what happened to him over the summer and simply talk about his development and rise as a senior. He's never played at this level before. Now, certainly what you're talking about makes it 10, 100 times more impressive.
For sure.
But, he was executing something that Larry Johnson will have taught him from day one, that match the hand. You hear those rushmen talk about it all the time. It was a perfect teaching tape. The fact that he was able to tip it up to himself and catch the interception, I mean, you almost never see that happen. An incredible play, and was kind of fitting since Larry Johnson's the interim head coach for this game, which is one of 50 more storylines that we could probably dive into on Rapid Reaction, brought to you by Byers Auto. But it was kind of fitting that a defensive lineman would make a play to get him that win, set him up for the Gatorade bath. Big time play from him. Pete Warner continued to be a dominant force, does not get enough attention. Trey Sermon had that breakout game that I've been talking about coming for a long time. That touchdown pointing to his wrist, it was finally time for him to break loose. You could keep going. Shaun Wade with a great pick when Ohio State needed it to just kind of put that game away.
Right. At the moment when you started to go, no, not the second half again after Chris Olave fumbles. And that's, if we're talking about weird little storylines that have been interwoven in this season, the fumble issues with Chris Olave are shocking.
Yeah, they're very strange.
And they're all the exact same play almost. It's something about when he's over the middle, he's twisting and turning that he's going to have to work on. But clearly the next play, Shaun Wade makes a diving interception. Michigan State playing with their backup quarterback and came out, and they really changed
Why
their
is
tempo.
that guy their backup quarterback?
Good Lord, are you kidding me? How good is Rocky Lombardi in practice, or how bad is Clayton Thorne? How bad is he in practice? Because that was not even close. When we were watching, and I don't mean to bag on Rocky Lombardi, but that guy, we talked about it all. He is not a Big Ten caliber quarterback. And clearly, the way that he was throwing the ball early in the game, he looked like a guy who was like, I'm going to throw it before I get hit every single play.
Yeah, Ohio State front seven certainly was making him uncomfortable as well. You could try to take this with a grain of salt. You build that big lead with Lombardi in there and the limits, the clear limitations of what they could do offensively. Again, that doesn't really matter. Ohio State still had to go out and prove it. If you're going to be critical of the way they played in the second half against Rutgers, then you have to appreciate what they did without a tough Bourne, without Josh Proctor, playing some younger guys in this game. You have to tip your hat to Dallas Gant and Pete Warner and Baron Browning and everybody down that list and give them credit for what they did today. If you're going to be critical of a couple weeks ago, then you have to do the same thing and praise for what they did today.
And it's fair to be critical. As we talked about at the end of the second half of that Indiana game, that was bad football. And the Buckeyes today could have taken the foot off the gas from an emotional standpoint. They obviously tried to slow things down with the offense. They weren't trying. Justin Fields, I would love to know if he just said to Kevin Wilson, I need to throw one more pass before I leave this game, and threw the touchdown pass to Olave down the sideline and then was pulled out. And then, of course, C.J. Stroud, Mayan Williams. I talked about Mayan Williams.
You did.
I'm telling you, I really believe Mayan Williams is a guy that Buckeyes fans are going to love over these next few years.
And, we'll talk about this more next week. Those situations, Stroud, what he needed to build for the future, what he showed keeping that football. Mayan Williams was running extremely hard. You just wonder how different things would have looked if those guys got to play a normal September.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to take any attention away from what I said about Trey Sermon, because that was legit. And this is why I guess Ohio State's playing both he and Master Teague. You find out which one's got the hot hand and you ride it. And that was Trey Sermon, certainly more than Master Teague today. It worked. When you're trying to spin that forward now into next week, there's a lot of uncertainty. I talked to a number of people around the program. They don't have any real confidence that the game is going to be played as scheduled. There was also a story in the Detroit Free Press on Friday night that was citing three sources within that program that they don't believe that they will be ready to play next Saturday. So
it's Michigan week, but it's also not Michigan week because we genuinely have no idea who the Buckeyes are playing next Saturday.
And normally you would have these post-game press conferences as you head into the regular season and all the questions, all right, now do you immediately turn your attention to the game? Ohio State can't do that. They wanted to play a game and celebrate a win. So after a couple weeks without that opportunity, they were going to make the most of it. Here's what I know at this point. The Big Ten is not expected, as of right now, to have any conversations about changing the 6-game minimum to qualify for the Big Ten championship game. That being said, they are aware, if they don't want to change that rule, that they have to do everything possible to allow Ohio State to play next week. This isn't about, doing a favor to Ohio State. It is for the good of the league that their best team with a college football playoff chance and all the money that brings and prestige and everything that goes with that, they are aware of that. So as you look at it, it would not be a situation that, in my understanding, that Minnesota, if they can't play, that Ohio State would just take Nebraska. You're probably looking at some moving pieces here. Could be a chance for Ohio State to get that rescheduled game against Maryland. Potentially that would be at Maryland, just the way it was supposed to be earlier this season. This is going to be a decision that cannot linger very long into the week.
Yeah.
There's going to be a conversation amongst athletic directors and presidents. Will be involved in the loop at some point tomorrow and Monday, and they need status reports of where Michigan is, if they are on the same track that Ohio State was, and can slowly turn that back into a potential practice by Tuesday or Wednesday. Then you hold steady a little bit, but they can't let this drag into the middle of the week. Ohio State and the Big Ten, they all know that. They need to get them to 6 games. So put a pin in that one. But that's likely what we're talking about. Is
something has to change. Ohio State needs to be in the Big Ten championship game. That is for the good of the league, as Austin said. So something has to change, whether it's the 6-game minimum win or 6-game minimum total, or the refusal to reschedule canceled games. That will have to change. Something has to change because the Buckeyes need to play a 6th game at this point, and we'll find out, I guess, probably as early as Monday or Tuesday as to what the league is going to do.
If a decision is made on Monday, then that would mean that Michigan is comfortable that their numbers are coming down. If we're talking about Tuesday, then we're probably talking about a change in schedule. We'll of course keep you updated with anything we hear. I got a lot of information, a lot of feedback today by seeing some people around the program, socially distanced and with these masks on. They took that very seriously, and Ohio State certainly does as well, coming off of what they did with the COVID protocols and getting back to work and getting back to winning a game. Anything else that you need to get into rapid reaction?
No, I just think it's important for people to understand. We talked about it after the Indiana game. The things that these kids and these coaches have had to go through this year to come out and play the way that they did today. We've harped on them all year about not putting a 4-quarter game together. To finally do that with everything else that could have been a distraction, I just think that it's, again, we talk about the culture here at Ohio State all the time, and you see it in full effect today because, as I said, almost 95% of the teams in the country would not have been able to do what the Buckeyes did today. Not only just playing the game, but playing a great game, a 520 yards of offense, shutting down the run game again for the 2nd straight game. They just keep going, and it's really special to see what they're doing.
I'm so sorry.
No problem. It's a stylish win for Ohio State. They moved to 5-0 in position still in the Big Ten race and in the college football playoff race. This was a dominant performance, 52-12 over the Michigan State Spartans. He's Berm. I'm Austin Ward. This has been Rapid Reaction.
We don't know who that guy was.
He was just our special guest. And he's talking about Justin Fields too, just like we are. 52-12. Buckeyes win into the final week of the regular season. We'll have a lot more coverage coming for you at Lettermen Row. We will see you there.